So I have a question. Is depression really a disease? Well, the way they diagnose major depressive disease is through these 9 behaviors or symptoms. If you have 5 or more of them, then you have major depressive disease. But those 5 or more have to include number 1 and 2, depressive mood, or a decreased interest in pleasure or having no pleasure, okay? So let's go through these symptoms. Depressive mood, decreased interest in pleasure, increase or decrease in appetite or weight. Number 4, increase or decrease in sleep. 5, fatigue or loss of energy. 6, feeling of worthlessness or inappropriate guilt. 7, decreased ability to concentrate. Number 8, agitation or retardation, which has a little different definition. Retardation in this definition means you're slowing down the body or slowing down the mind, okay? Number 9, recurrent thoughts of death or suicide, okay? So these are all the different characteristics, and you have to have 5 or more that must include either number 1 or 2 to have this disease. Now, here's the question I have. What objective test can you do? Is there a blood test? Is there a CAT scan that can show something wrong with the body? And where is the problem located exactly? They have not found that out. And so this is really based on opinion. It's very arbitrary. What I would like to know is why not look at these other factors, which are a lot more objective. The diet, okay? What is the person eating? Is it possible that what they're eating can cause an imbalance in blood sugars and actually cause them to be depressed? I found that diet is a huge influence over someone's mood. You can measure objectively the vitamin D levels. If you're low in vitamin D, one of the symptoms is depression. You can also measure testosterone. If you're low in testosterone, one of the symptoms could be depression. You can measure the thyroid. If your thyroid is deficient, you have hypothyroidism, one of the symptoms is depression. If you're low in vitamin B1, if you're severely low, it can affect your cognitive function to the point where you could be depressed. You can measure that as well. If you don't have enough sleep, you can feel depressed. The feelings of depression and the feelings of exhaustion and lack of energy and vitality are very similar. One time I was in practice, and this lady was in the room, and she came in and she was depressed. And I tested her, and the test was called heart rate variability. And it measured something called the autonomic nervous system. And it was literally flatlined. I mean, there was nothing going on. I've never seen a test that bad ever. And so that really indicated a lot of problems, including exhaustion. And so I looked at the test and I said, I understand that you're depressed, but honestly, based on this test right here, I think you're completely exhausted. And you know what happened? She instantly felt better because someone finally found something that was more objective. And I said, do you feel depressed now? She goes, actually, no, I don't feel depressed right now. In fact, I don't even feel tired, just by knowing what her problem was. That was fascinating. All right, you can be fatigued from Lyme disease, Epstein-Barr virus, other viruses, anemia, lack of iron. You can even have chronic pain in your body and inflammation. That can actually make you depressed. So the question is depression really disease? Go ahead and comment down below and tell me what you think. Today we're going to talk about the secret to not only reduce the symptom of anxiety, but the symptom of depression as well. And it has everything to do with your microbiome. That's the gut bacteria. The largest number of nerves outside the brain are located right down here in your gut. Also, the gut and the brain are bidirectional. In other words, there's a huge communication line between your gut and your brain. What's happening down here is going to affect up here. And it just so happens that your gut microbiome, your microbes, make neurotransmitters. And so all the neurotransmitters like GABA, dopamine, serotonin are made by your microbes. And serotonin can greatly affect your mood. And the people who have symptoms of anxiety and depression nearly always have gut issues. And also your gut makes B vitamins. And there's a huge relationship between all sorts of mood disorders and a lack of B vitamins. If you have gut inflammation, that's going to affect your mood. So just by getting rid of inflammation alone, that will elevate your mood. Now, the other point I want to bring up is the link between antidepressants and how that can affect your gut bacteria. It actually inhibits the growth of your friendly bacteria, especially the two psychiatric drugs, Abilify and Norpinephrine. And so there's some slight minor side effects with Abilify. You could gain weight, you can have GI symptoms, and with these next side effects, I am absolutely not kidding. You can have a strong desire to gamble, binge eat, shop, and engage in sexual activities. Now, more common side effects are vomiting, sleeplessness, dizziness, and movement disorders. And what's interesting, they don't even really know how Abilify works, but it has apparently something to do with neurotransmitters. Now, let's look at something. 90% of the serotonin is produced in your gut. And you have SSRIs, stands for serotonin selective reuptake inhibitors. So these antidepressant drugs affect serotonin. A big side effect from SSRIs is this. It decreases the diversity of your microbiome, and it also creates an alteration in your microbes, and it increases inflammation, which all three of these increase the need for SSRIs. So what's wrong with this picture? A lot. This is what I'm going to recommend. If you have depression or anxiety, just focus on your gut. Get on a good probiotic. Start consuming fermented vegetables. I'm talking about kimchi or sauerkraut, pickles, things like that, or even fermented dairy, as in kefir, maybe some Bulgarian yogurt, and do fasting. All three of these remedies can have a significant effect on your mood. All right, thanks for watching. There's a drink, okay, it's a type of tea that I would highly recommend you start drinking if you have depression. This drink is the second most common drink in the world behind water. Can you guess what it is? In this tea, there are many different pharmacological active compounds that create a vast spectrum of benefits. In one study, just drinking 3 cups of this tea per week reduced depression by 21%. And then they compared drinking 1 cup of this tea per day to drinking 4 cups of this tea per day, and bumped up that number to a reduction in depression by 51%. And I'm also going to share with you a couple other things that are going to be very, very important to add to this tea to bring it to the next level. Now, what causes depression? Well, many different things. A loss of a loved one can cause depression. Stress can cause depression. A lack of sleep can cause depression. Certain nutritional deficiencies can create depressive feelings. And there's a lot of people looking for alternatives to medication because medication has side effects. Well, this particular tea might be able to help you, and it is green tea. Green tea is unfermented, okay? So it's different than other teas. Like black tea, for example, is fermented. Green tea is unfermented. A lot of people drink this tea trying to lose weight. There's certain research on that. Also, there's a lot of people that drink this tea because of stress, because it actually increases your ability to adapt to stress. It's considered an adaptogen. In certain areas of the brain, like the prefrontal cortex, and another part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens. What's that? Well, that's the area of the brain that is involved in addictions. They don't really fully understand it. Another part of the brain, certain bioactive compounds in green tea can affect is the hippocampus, which is all about cognitive function, memory, learning, things like that. Green tea also has another compound called L-theanine, or some people call it L-theanine. And this amino acid helps with mood stabilization, shows that it improves depression directly, also your quality of sleep, reducing stress levels, and something called neurogenesis, which is the rebuilding of nerves, which is pretty wild. And there's other effects, anti-carcinogenic, antimicrobial, neuroprotective. There's studies that show that it may reverse age-related cognitive deficits. And the big thing that green tea has the potential to do is help you reduce cortisol. And cortisol is behind not just stress and anxiety, but also depression too. So green tea helps to regulate cortisol because it's an adaptogen. I would definitely recommend drinking at least 1 cup of green tea every single day. However, there's a couple other things I would highly recommend to add to this green tea. And that is this thing called exercise. Exercise is the next antidepressant. In one study with 156 adults who all had a major depressive disorder, within 4 months, it showed that the results were similar to Zoloft. If you continue to study 3 months later, only 30% of the group that exercised had depression, and 52% of the drug group had depression. So if you continue to do exercise for a longer period of time, it's going to work better than certain SSRIs. Your emotions are affected by motion. High intensity interval training is going to be the best for depression and anxiety, but the key is making sure that you don't do it for a long period of time. You want short bursts of high intensity of exercise with lots of rest. And I'm talking about running, 12 seconds and then resting for 4 minutes. Yeah, that's the pattern that you want to do. And then you cycle through that, do it again. Now, if you can walk out in the sun, if it's summer, that would be the ultimate. But vitamin D also has a huge effect, whether someone is depressed or not. This is why during the winter months, people get the blues. So vitamin D is the third thing I would recommend. And I would recommend minimally 20,000 international units of vitamin D every single day. That should produce a nice effect. Okay, and the fourth thing I'm going to recommend is fasting. Now, real quick story. I had someone who reached out to me, a success story of a guy who was suicidal, severe depression. And I did a whole interview with him, and I'll put that link down below, but he was suicidal. So he decided to kill himself. He locked himself in his room. He was going to starve himself for 3 days. No water, no food, nothing. By the 3rd day, he started feeling so good and so wonderful. It rebounded on him. He did fasting. Fasting has interesting survival properties that help our bodies survive better. It actually got rid of his depression, and his depression never came back. He went online. He started learning about it. He started following me, and now he has a job. He's no longer depressed. He's no longer angry. He no longer has anxiety. It's amazing just from fasting. Now, since we touched on this hormone cortisol, there's a lot more to know about it. So I put a link down below so you can download this 1-page document so you can learn all of the ways of how to lower cortisol to help with stress, anxiety, and depression.